So, talk about the Bohemian Club. What is that for people out there who don't know about this, what some would say secret society?
Well, in 1878, a group of artists and newspaper reporters in San Francisco set up a retreat about 60 miles north of San Francisco, outside the tiny mining town of Monteria. But by the turn of the century, U.S. presidents were traveling there once a year to take part in the revelry. And it began to get more and more occultic by the 20s and 30s. And we know this from some of the internal annals of the Bohemian Club that we've gotten a hold of from some of the California universities that have been the official archivist of the Bohemian Grove. And so there was a lot of occultic rituals, Masonic rituals, and things that go on there, but none of it had ever been caught on video. And on July 15th, 2000, July 15th is always when they kick off the Bohemian Grove. It had been rumored that they engaged in this strange ritual where they burnt the effigy of a child before this 45-foot stone idol that looks like a bull or a horned owl. And so I snuck into the Bohemian Grove with a hidden camera and shot the first and only footage of the actual ritual taking place. And the old men in the audience, they're on the side of the little pond, across the pond watching the mock human sacrifice take place. They were taking the ritual very, very serious. And so that's one reason the Bohemian Grove is so important. Another reason is it's really an extension of Skull and Bones that the Bushes attend at Yale, which also, it's been confirmed, does bizarre Luciferian or occultic kind of druidic rituals. And there's 2,000 members to the Bohemian Grove every year. World leaders, British prime ministers, German chancellors travel there. The Duke of Edinburgh has been there. Prince Charles has been there, along with many other people. And a lot of big decisions, political decisions, the Grove has bragged, get made in the Chalet. And that's a meeting house that holds several hundred people there in the 2,700-acre Redwood Grove Preserve. And it's predominantly conservatives and Christian leaders that go there. There are some, quote, liberals that go there. And that's another thing that's so strange about it, is that Vanity Fair snuck in but got caught, and their reporter was arrested last year. People magazine had their reporter arrested back in the 1980s. Many others have tried to sneak in and have failed. I'm the only person to ever successfully sneak in and get out with footage without being arrested and prosecuted. And when I was in there, I did see some homosexual activity, but no intercourse. And I was trying to stay away from the crowds and hide out till nighttime. I was only inside about 5 hours on the date of one of the rituals. There's other reported rituals that go on there. But Vanity Fair did witness homosexual activity, and some other newspaper reporters that have made it in and been arrested also have witnessed it. And so there's a lot of homosexual orgies that go on there. And you've got not just myself saying this. In an interview with Harper's Magazine, Richard Nixon said that homosexual orgies go on there. And then after his death, Harper's actually released the recorded interview with Richard Nixon. I mean, he did this on record. It's just Harper's had never released the audio. But Richard Nixon was an attendee, and he was photographed with Ronald Reagan and President Dwight D. Eisenhower there at the same table back in the 1960s, even before he became California governor. So it is a very bizarre place where the elite of the United States and of the Fortune 100 go and engage in bizarre homosexual orgies and druidic rituals. And former German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt, in his book Men and Powers, a political retrospective, bragged about how they are the New World Order. They're setting up the global government. They are bringing in this world government. And he said they have their own groves in Germany where they do rituals, but his favorite place to do rituals is the Bohemian Grove. So that's a book published by the former German Chancellor.
So besides all of this that you just told me, which is shocking in and of itself, what did they go there generally to discuss? I mean, what kind of conversation can we expect at one of these meetings, one of these encampments?
Well, the Grove was very, very secretive until I was able to infiltrate and basically expose one of their rituals. And since then, they've been kind of putting out their own PR, just like the CFR and Bilderberg Group, some of the political arms of the Bohemian Grove have been doing lately. And they brag that they launched the Star Wars program, or SDI, at the Grove, that Reagan made the decision to go public with that program at the Grove, that the Manhattan Project was launched secretly from the Bohemian Grove, and that they decided to run the operation out of Los Alamos from there, and that the lakeside chats are where a lot of very high-level announcements are made to the rest of the Western elite. And so a lot of big decisions are made there. In fact, I have a Detroit Free Press article from the 1950s at the height of the Cold War, where the Russian foreign minister traveled to the U.S., and he didn't go to D.C. He went to meet with the real elite in some type of internal détente at the Bohemian Grove. And you can pull that article up. So this is where the elite of the planet travel to have high-level decisions. And there's probably nowhere other than Bilderberg where this many high-level decisions are made. This is a major conference that goes on from mid-July to the first week of August, and it is revelry, drunkenness. It's all male, so they bring the male prostitutes in. They do have female prostitutes in the town of Monterey. They fill several hotels with high-dollar prostitutes. Mainstream news has even videoed the jets lined up disgorging the male and female prostitutes, the $2,000 an hour type, to service the elite. So it's a 2 weeks of debauchery, sex, orgies, druidic rituals, and world decisions being made. It's important because a lot of up-and-coming leaders are brought there to compromise themselves. They have to join the club, and so they, just like Skull and Bones, they compromise themselves in a lot of bizarre activities to become made members of this Western power elite. It's important because it shows that the Western elite of the planet are just as decadent and insane and crazy and bizarre as Nero or Caligula in the last years of Rome. If you want to catch on video who is attending, you need to go to the airport in Santa Rosa, a nearby major city, and scores of private jets land, and the heads of IBM and the heads of Hewlett-Packard and David Rockefeller and George Bush Sr., Newt Gingrich, George W. Bush, Jeb Bush, Prince Charles has been photographed, Ben Bernanke's been photographed, former Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan's been photographed. Basically, the heads of the Fortune 100 are there. And then you've got the heads of academia, the heads of banking, and generally the heads of the House, the Senate, and the executive. In fact, here are some of the annals of the Bohemian Grove. This is the annals from 1987 to 1996. And you can see a photo there of the ritual being carried out where they're burning the effigy of a child. And also in here, there are photographs of Bush Sr. and George W. Bush, his son, speaking from the podium. Here's Walter Cronkite, Richard Nixon together. In fact, here is Richard Nixon giving a lakeside chat right there.
And then
agent provocateurs.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Well,
so,
by the way, I learned about that from Alex Jones.
So that's the problem with Alex Jones. He's right about stuff sometimes.
Yes, and well, he was way more right about stuff in the past. Alex himself, and I've talked to him about this, says he drinks too much and he's getting too crazy. He needs to go on a diet and exercise and start getting his life in order. And he takes things too far sometimes. And
he should take
goes
some
off the
pills.
rails. He goes off the rails. Like he and I had a conversation, but he got mad at me for saying that I didn't think George Soros was a Nazi. And so he had this whole thing where he ranted, and then we talked back and forth, and he apologized, and you know, he said I sometimes
You're the one
take
taking
things
DMT,
too far.
Joe. You're the one taking DMT, Joe.
I'm talking to aliens.
I didn't say that. You did.
But I think he recognizes that sometimes he's just caught up in that cycle of outrage that cycle of outrage, there's no room for like, there's no room to step back and to sort of reset. It's just constant outrage, constantly under attack, and then there's these words that get thrown around that sort of lose their meaning, like globalists, you know, and shills, and you know, and this sort of like attitude that there's this cabal of evil that is trying to take over the world. And at one point, Alex had this idea that they were going to try to kill off most people. Yeah. And you remember that?
I heard about it.
There was this idea that they wanted to euthanize, or it was genocide. They wanted to break it down to, what is the word where they talk about doing that? To talk about reducing the population. There's like some sort of a conspiracy theorist term of reduction of population to a sustainable number of super evil geniuses that could live forever. And they wanted to get it down to, like, you know, 500 million people worldwide that can live for 1 million years or some crazy shit. But I think that's that whole cycle of like constant outrage and everything's a conspiracy, and you get just whacked out and caught up in it. If you go back to Alex's earlier videos, I met Alex in '98, I believe. And back then, Alex was going after George W. Bush when George W. Bush was running for president. And he was saying that this guy he's a puppet, and that he's a puppet of the CIA, and you know, and he, you know, he supports genocide, and he was showing up at campaign rallies, and they were arresting him. He was anti-right wing. I mean, he was anti what he thought was this globalist agenda. He also infiltrated Bohemian Grove when everybody thought that Bohemian Grove was nonsense. There's nothing really going on. He's like, no, these really rich people are getting together with heads of state and foreign dignitaries, and they're dressing up like fucking druids, and they have an effigy that they burn in front of the owl god Molech, and people are like, he's crazy. Then he releases the video, and like, oh my God, they really do that. Like, he did some good work. The World Trade Organization protests in his video 9/11 A Road to Tyranny. Right after 9/11, he releases this video that shows that the World Trade Organization protests were infiltrated by these agent provocateurs who were most likely government agents with government agent boots on, by the way. He shows this in the video. They smash windows. They're all wearing masks. They light things on fire. Then they all hole up in one house. They negotiate with the police and are all eventually released. This is all done under, I mean, he proved all this. He showed all how this is going. Like, look at these peaceful protesters. Then the consequences of that, they established a no protest line at the WTO where you couldn't go by with a pin on. If you tried to get through with a pin that said WTO with a red line through it, they told you you could not wear that pin. You can't come through here. This is a no protest zone. And he's like, this is the consequences of this kind of censorship, and this is how they establish the censorship. They make it seem like your organization is violent and dangerous by introducing violent and dangerous elements in the form of undercover police officers or military. They smash windows, tip over newspaper stands, and fucking create chaos so that the government has to come in because now we have a violent situation. So then the military comes in and arrests protesters and silences the protests so they don't look embarrassing in front of all these people from foreign countries that are coming here to the World Trade Organization.
I didn't know he did that, but yeah.
Dude, he's not wrong always, and he was more right back then. He was also more sane back then. He was more measured and more calm. It wasn't this. He didn't have the big moon face back then either, and he wasn't drinking as much, I don't think, and the screaming and the spitting and you know, you ask him, he'll say, well, I'm just overwhelmed by the sheer volume of corruption and all the shit that he sees every day. Look, do you remember he was crying when Trump bombed Syria? He was crying because he was crying that Trump fucked us.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I really genuinely believe most of the time that he means well. The thing is, when you look for conspiracies everywhere, like everything that's a conspiracy, you're off track. And I don't think there's anyone there that can sit down and go, stop, hold on, let's examine this in a factual way. Let's cut the hyperbole out, and let's look at what the facts are and where are we getting these facts and why do we think this is happening and why do you think this is fake? Because that sounds fucking crazy to me. No one's there to do that. if someone was there to do that, I think he probably would be stopped and would examine things and would balance out. You know, like one of the reasons why I wanted to have him on my podcast when I did was because I wanted people to see the Alex that I know. Because people are like, how could you know that guy? I'm like, look at how he is when I get him high and we get drunk and he's laughing about stuff and talking about interdimensional child molesters and all that. Like, this is what I wanted everybody to see. Like, this is Alex Jones. He's a fun guy. It's just that is not a good position to be in, where you're constantly looking for conspiracies everywhere you go. And you might nail a few, but then you might call out a bunch of them that are fake, which not just negates the ones that you nailed, but negates everything you say. As soon as you're one of those guys that everything's a conspiracy and then dead kids aren't really dead and everyone's an actor and like everything that you say that's good, they're going to stop.
My thing is that I focus on the ones that are important, right? That I think, that's right. I care about wars and the lies that are told about wars from the media, which the media pushes every war in my lifetime. So that's the ones I care about. I hear everything you're saying, and yeah, I didn't really know. I gotta say, God, I didn't really know much about Alex Jones until I met him, you know, very famously at that incident. I never really watched him. I went home that night and watched some of his videos, which is when I found out some of them are really funny. And so honest to God, I didn't really know much about him, and so I don't even know this stuff. So
see if you can find it, Jamie. See if did they pull all that stuff from YouTube? Everything. But doesn't someone else have it probably on their channel?
And I never did videos about him or debunk, but I just, you know, it's just he wasn't in my line of sight.
Right. Yeah.
I was busy making fun of MSNBC and CNN. That's what I like to do.